Think Buy and Think Africa. I remain your host, Young Joseph. Well, lately I've been getting, messages and people, kind of like sending me messages, but the little thing that we've been doing with the whole concept of, of course, buying and of course thinking Africa, with the whole concept of, really investing in Africa. I'm really super grateful to everyone that is sending the message through. But even though you guys are not subscribed, and I will want you to subscribe because that is what will keep us going to keep doing what we're doing for you to have the love that for your continent. Well, however, coming back to speaking about where to invest and how to invest and all that, I am not a financial advisor, but the thing is this, some of the things that I learned also personally, in my own personal work, some of the things that I also speak about. And so when we talk about investing, I do know that, when we look at demographics, we look at, tech adoption, we look at untapped resources, we talk about, things that can actually offer, generational returns. And you in the diaspora, on the other hand, some of the most powerful investor group, ever alive. And if only you can just actually understand the dynamics. And since you have the capital, all you need is just to understand also the culture. But having said that as well, one of the things also that I want to speak about is that before you send any money home, for investing and things like that, that's the more reason why I want to do this episode, and also to try to clarify a number of issues, in terms of the risk and of course the reward, in terms of when you invest in Africa, what you need to understand. And so this is what this episode really is about. If you stick around long enough, you will learn something, one or two things that will actually make meaning to that money that you want to invest in Africa. Every little dime counts. Let's do this. So let's start first by speaking about the rewards. I like starting with the rewards, and of course, we can talk about the risk a little bit later. So, what does Africa have that you can really tap into? Now, we need to realize as well that when we look at the population, the African population, based on the United Nations, data, you find, we're having close to about 1.5 billion people, and there's a possibility, of us, scaling up, to about 1.7 billion people. And like I always say, most of my videos, that is a market left untapped. However, that market as well can actually become a demographic, revolution. And when we look at the population dividend and what that can do in terms of also the young people, you discover that we have the youngest population on the African continent, and that also translates to a faster, growing, market, which actually serves as a gold mine. However, what are those things that we need to do in terms of investing that will really, be a game changer? And one of them is actually fintech. Fintech actually has been, making a lot of buzz across the continent. The only sad reality of it is that we have an issue where you don't have a considerable fintech options that spiral, or probably that is from Cape Town to Cairo, or from Nairobi to Lagos. We would It will be nice if we can actually set up a fintech app that can actually work across the rest of the continent. So it's still a field that is left untapped. And one of the things you see basically most of the time is you find most countries, in most countries, those who build these apps, they build the app just for only the market where they are actually domiciled. And it will be nice if that can be scaled up, to the rest of Africa. And the next thing I want to point out as well is agritech. When we look at Africa now, 60% unused arable land, can actually become a food empire. And what that means as well is that there is supposed to be, a revolution, or probably even a research, major research actually within the agricultural world, in Africa. When we compare Africa, with the rest of the world, one good thing that you will find across the African continent with the land in Africa is that it is very, very fertile. And that's the more reason why you see people coming in from all corners of the world, to get land, here. I mean, most recently I was speaking with a friend, and she was telling me how, because she has some of those business partners, that are from, from Asia. And so some of them were wanted to get, a massive, space of land. But thank God for the policy of the government in that country. There's a considerable amount of land that you can acquire. You can get more than that, quantity of land, or probably the size, of land. So agriculture is still another very, very viable area that anyone can actually work out, invest in, or investment in. Another area that is actually really massive, of course, sunlight in Africa is something that is available, not only, from, Cape Town to Cairo alone, but all across the continent. So Africa provides that opportunity, for solar and off-grid, innovations, to solve, chronic, power gaps. Unfortunately, that area is still invested. People are not actually really investing, in that area that much. But it will be nice to really see, investment, going into that area. It provides a huge opportunity for anyone, who knows, their game and their numbers, also in terms of investing. And you, that is an African living in the diaspora, provides a huge opportunity. And I'm not speaking about only Africans and diaspora alone. If you're also on the continent, it's also an opportunity also for you to actually invest. So, as a diasporan, investor, you have an edge. Yeah, you have an edge. You speak the language, and literally, you don't only speak the language, you speak it figuratively. And you also have the cultural, influence. And of course, you are, somebody that has, a global reputation. And so, if I were you, much more than, just acquiring things also in the West, it will be also a great idea when you look at some of the businesses that you can actually start. And I was speaking with a friend most recently, and she was telling me, in terms of how was she going to get people to manage them. And one of the questions I asked her is this: that does she work in an organization? And she said yes. I said, and how do people set up an organization on one continent, whereas the headquarter of the organization is on another continent? Now, usually I say this to people: the time to start is now. You can't learn everything as you proceed. You learn them, as you go, gradually. So let's talk about risk. And when we speak about risk, one thing that you realize most of the time is that people don't want to hear about risk. And when I was talking about rewards, I can guarantee you a lot of people concentrated on rewards. Now let's talk about risk. But anyway, the core risk is actually the currency, killer. You and I know, you may be a diasporan, and you and I know that one of the things that you will find, anywhere in Africa is the currency, fluctuation. It's actually, the volatility that happens, with the currency. Sometimes, you could make 50%, profit, and then, but if your local, currency just decide, to just plummet, you discover that you have, losing, a whole lot of, money, in the long run. And usually, just ensure you just make some level of profit, and then try to exit. The issue is that to do business in Africa, it's a part of the risk that you just have to have at the back of your mind, that this risk exists. And so how do I work around it? Not talking about, or probably complaining about it, because one of the things that a lot of people miss out on is that, rather than focus on how they can work around, the whole currency, and also make, a considerable income, then they look at how, it's, a problem. And that is not usually the healthy way, to go, about it. So you are not just losing profit, you are also losing your principal if you are not careful in terms of working around it. And I think that is the biggest risk, that you will find, with doing business, on the continent. But still yet, you find also the Asians, on the continent, being able, or going around, finding ways also to be able to manage, the currency volatility, and they are able to navigate their way around it. You also just need to sit down, take a study, take a pen, put down what you need to do, how you can go about it, some of the things that you can actually do in terms of knowing how to navigate. So the last thing I want to speak about is something I will call the diaspora trap, emotional mistakes. There's this skit that I watched, by someone, and he was asked, I mean, how come you're looking so good? I mean, you're wearing beautiful clothes and all that. And he was like, his brother living abroad had sent him money and he's been doing that consistently over the last year. And so he doesn't need to work. And so he's looking good off of his brother. Now, those are the types of traps you find most of the time, in investing, when you are investing, in Africa. And so your greatest risk, when you're looking at other type of risk will be your emotion. You have to put it in check. You have to manage it. Now, in line of that, you just realize that you begin to fall into familiar traps, and that is something you need to totally abhor, totally avoid. I mean, if you can, I mean, you need to shut, such doors. I mean, shut them down totally. So, but if you are going to look at, within those areas, you look at things like emotional geography, you want to invest, but now here's your aunt or sister living in another province, and you're like, since my aunt or sister or whoever is living in the other province, now let me go ahead to invest where my relatives are. Brother, sister, why don't you invest in a place where you know that as much as you are investing their risk and all that, you have, your investment tied, to laws such that, when you are investing, you can actually head out, to court when the time comes. You have to look at that as well. Do not invest because of, having, some emotion, tied, to certain places. And of course, the no market, fit in terms of you just want to copy what you saw in the West and just bring it and just put it in the African model. It ain't going to work. You know why it's not going to work? The fact of the matter is that in the West, a lot of people use credit cards. Now, flip it to the African continent, totally different model. Now, most of the time, most places people use cash. And if they know cash sitting in the bank, then what you need to do is that you have to buy, you have to wait along, till, you have money, to buy that item. So you have to have that at the back of your mind. And I think that is also another area that a lot of people are missing out on. They just want to copy what they see in the West and put it in the African model. These are two different markets, and you have to localize your business on the African continent. Then another thing I want to speak about as well is the all-in capital, wherein now you're starting a business and then you're like, okay, everything goes in. Not even a plan B, not even something sitting somewhere. You need to understand, as well that yeah, you have to have reserves, right? Reserves, for delays, for fuel, for permits, and so many other things that can actually crop up. So you don't just, put in everything, at once. And also, the other thing which I would call the last thing is that there is the absence of tax. So when you trust people blindly, and then of course no contracts, no audits, no systems, brother, sister, I don't think that is a good place, to invest, because most places, there are tax, returns that you need to file, for the government. And that is, of course, you and I know when it comes to tax, based on the fact that you've been living in diaspora, it's always a crime when you try to evade tax. So learn to always file your taxes, and also, to do the right thing when you are investing. I do hope that some of those things that I've spoken about have really made meaning. So when you are treating your investment, treat your investment like a venture capitalist. It's not a family donation. When you do have money to give to family, why don't you give them something on the sideline? That's a totally different thing that you need to do. So do not treat your investment, like a family donation. So in conclusion, I will look at it like this from the rule of three, right? Local expertise, where you find the appropriate expertise for what you want to invest. Might cost you more because, of course, the person you are hiring, you will need to pay that person. People try to move around that to say, you know what, I've got one relative. I mean, he is also an expert on this field. When it comes to law, it's going to be probably difficult, because at the end of the day, y'all got to gather by the family gathering to actually quell that matter. And then your money is gone. And that's why some people, usually say, I tried this, it didn't work out. So look for a working professional that you can work with, a vetted one, that then do diligence in terms of verifying titles, claims, and registrations, personally. Do that. If you do have a lawyer, even in the West, or probably in the West, somebody in the West that can also help you looking at some of those documents, always try to do that. People just throw money blindly and then say, you know what, I just want to purchase this amount of land or that amount of land. And then somebody sends in probably maybe a fake document or something and it's not verified. And then they get to lose their money. Number three will be phased capital in terms of start small. Do not just, because people just say, you know what, I just want to start very big. Start small. Prove that it works, then scale. That is how to go about it. You don't just, get involved immediately, the entire, money that you have sitting in the bank. At the end of the day, you're gonna cry. There's this video, somebody say you're gonna cry. You're actually gonna cry. So please start small, gradually prove that it works, and then you can scale. And so what are my final words when I'm speaking about this? Now, my final words is this. Africa is like every other place, is not for the faint-hearted. It is not for the faint-hearted. But one thing I realize, and as well I can say anywhere, is this, that it is bold and it is strategic. So for those who are very bold and very strategic, you'll be able to take the market because the opportunities are endless. And of course, if you can do that, guess what will happen? Unmatched rewards. And these are rewards also that can be generational. And I love the term that is being used sometimes for Africa, even though I don't agree in entirety with the term. And that is a developing, continent. And that word itself makes a whole lot of meaning. So if you are ready, to really invest in anything, on the continent of Africa, realize and have it at the back of your mind to have your things necessarily done in the right order. Well, that's my own humble opinion. Like I said, always make your own verification by finding appropriate, financial, professionals to actually advise you. But at the end of the day, Africa is still open for those who want it for the taking. And right now, it's sitting in the palm of your hands. And I tell you this, it's growing and there's so much that's going to happen. And I do hope that you're going to be one of those persons that will change the continent for good. That's too much I can say for this episode. Please, if you do like anything that I've been doing here, don't fail to please subscribe. Subscribe, like, share, invite someone. More videos will be coming out. And of course, I will be speaking more on several more issues. And that's the more reason why you have to subscribe and follow and share. God bless you. I'll be seeing you on the next episode.